Let's talk about drones for a minute. The Mavic Mini 2 can fly up to 6 miles, which is super impressive for how small and how quiet this machine is. DJI developed OcuSake. It's a dedicated wireless setup from the controller to the drone, hence the incredible 6 mile control signal, as opposed to running the machine on Wi Fi like we've typically seen. I'm Beth Motter here with Tiernan Ray. Tiernan, this is quite the development. 6 miles is a lot of distance for a drone, especially of this size. What does this mean for the drone community?
Yeah, this is an amazing breakthrough, Beth. And I think this is maybe kind of a crossing over from what was pro or prosumer kinds of gear into the amateur market. We're used to thinking about drones as being something, if it does a lot of flight, it's something large, noisy, heavy that someone will pilot. And a year ago, DJI, which is a major drone manufacturer, came out with this tiny little drone. It's about 6 inches by 3 inches by 2 inches. It really sits in your hand. It's half a pound. And it's tiny and it's super, super quiet. It's a little bit of a stealth drone, but it had a limit of 2.5 miles. And in practical terms, you wouldn't fly it that far. They now took this proprietary technology, they replaced the Wi Fi that was used to go between the handheld controller and the drone with this OcuSync technology. It can now fly 6 miles. So, what it's kind of doing is taking the professional or prosumer capabilities of long distance flight and adding it to this $450 amateur or beginner drone. This is a crazy kind of sort of infusion of the beginner consumer market with these prosumer features. And we've seen these in other areas in video technologies and such, where there's this crossover. And it seems to mean that the beginner market or the amateur market starts to get a big boost, starts to become much more sort of power packed and much more capable.
Yeah, the price point on this definitely opens it up to maybe more of you and I sitting at home playing with this as opposed to some professionals. What does that opens that gate for the amateur community? What do you think that does for that community overall?
Yeah, in practical terms, again, you won't be flying any drones in most areas for 6 miles distance. But what it does
Right.
mean is if you buy this cheap $450 drone, which is several $100s cheaper than the entry level of other products, even from DJI, in places that are crowded markets where you would get a lot of cellular interference, where you might have a really poor experience with this drone, you now get a much more robust signal, again, from the controller to the drone, which means that as a beginning kind of experience in using this technology, it might be much more reliable. You might have a much better experience with it. Many fewer sort of interruptions of service, interruptions of communication. And so it may be that it brings in more people who say, oh yeah, I bought this thing for $450. It's very reliable. I have no problem flying it. And so, yeah, you could think of it as a step up from what the sort of first impressions are going to be for the amateur user of this technology. It might bring a lot more people in.
Yeah, and with a lot more people who can afford this technology, you can assume that that means there will be a lot more drones kind of flying around. This is really small. This is really quiet. It's almost kind of creepy.
Yes. Everyone has stories of someone was spying with a drone, and they're kind of creepy stories. We may be sort of just at the beginning of this or the end of the beginning where these things are super tiny, they're super quiet. You wouldn't hear them like a pro drone, and they could be miles away from the person who's operating them. All kinds of crazy possibilities. As you said before, getting tinier and tinier to the point where you can't even see these things, but they have incredible range, incredible reliability. So, yeah, the kind of the mind reels at what could happen with this stuff out there.
Yeah, especially for something it just fits in the palm of your hand. I don't think I'm gonna look up at the sky and I mean, what is that? The size of a bird, maybe you're looking up and you're seeing this little black speck flying around. You're not gonna think much of it.
Imagine when it's this tiny, right? And it has long distance flight and it's super quiet and it's super reliable for the person who's, 6 to 10 miles away piloting it. Interesting prospects.
Yeah, Tiernan, that's whew, I don't know if that's a world I'm sure I want to live in. Innovation's good, but maybe not so much in this case. I really like my privacy. So for all things drones and for more of Tiernan's article, be sure to check out ZDNet.